Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into quite a collection of really diverse insights. We're drawing on perspectives that, well, they span centuries and disciplines.
Yeah, it's quite a mix.
It really is. We're looking at thoughts from philosophers, seasoned writers, even tactical strength coaches, and reflections that come through the lens of famous figures and surprisingly dog breeding.
Vibrating, right?
On the surface, it feels like, wow, this is a wildly varied stack of material. But
Yeah.
as we started digging in, it became pretty clear that all these distinct pieces are sort of circling around some really fundamental human questions.
hmm Big questions.
Exactly. Like, how do we actually grow? How do we not just, cope with, but maybe even benefit from the tough stuff life throws at us? And maybe the biggest one, where do we find those elusive moments of real happiness and lasting meaning?
That's definitely the thread we're chasing today. Our mission really is to move beyond just reading these quotes or summaries. We want to take these sources and really excavate the core nuggets of wisdom,
Dig deep.
right? Find the surprising connections between them, connections you might not spot right away, and crucially, translate what this all might mean for you, the listener. It's about pulling out practical, actionable wisdom for navigating your own path in, well, it's a complex world.
Absolutely. So, yeah, buckle up. We've got everything from like how to pick up a heavy weight the right way to insights gleaned from the history of canine classification.
It's an unusual mix for sure.
It is, but trust us, the synthesis at the end, it kind of brings it all together into this powerful, well, the source calls it a philosophy for living. Let's dive in.
Okay.
So, where do we even begin with this? The sources, they immediately confront us with a really challenging idea right at the top.
Yeah.
This notion that struggle isn't just something to endure or avoid, but maybe something essential for progress.
Right.
It kicks off with a quote from Kevin Kelly. When crisis and disaster strike, don't waste them. No problems, no progress.
Wow. That hits hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, our natural human wiring, it's all about seeking comfort, safety, ease. We pull back from crisis and disaster, and rightly so, they're painful.
Oh, of course.
But Kelly's quote, as the source frames it, isn't trying to romanticize suffering. Not at all. It's more of a pragmatic observation about how growth actually happens.
Okay.
Just think about it. When are we really forced to adapt? When do we have to innovate? When do we discover capabilities we didn't even know we had? Almost always, it's when things get difficult.
Right.
When the old ways just don't work anymore, when we're under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Problems create friction, and that friction, well, that's what allows us to get traction and move forward. Without the problem, there's just no stimulus demanding change or improvement. It's almost the definition of needing to overcome an obstacle to advance.
It's like you said, you wouldn't build muscle if you weren't lifting something heavy. There just has to be some resistance. And this is cool. The sources provide this fantastic, really concrete example of this principle in action. I found it really illustrative. Pavel Tsatsouline's specific philosophy on weightlifting.
Yes, this is where that abstract idea, no problems, no progress, meets the iron.
Yeah.
Literally. Tsatsouline, he's a pretty well-known strength coach, and he has this kind of counterintuitive approach. It's focused on consistent, high-quality practice rather than just training to failure all the time.
Right, the go hard or go home mentality.
Exactly. He pushes against that. He advocates for using what he calls Goldilocks loads.
Goldilocks loads, like not too hot, not too cold, the porridge thing.
Precisely. Yeah, exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
In weightlifting terms, it means choosing a weight that is heavy enough to be challenging heavy enough that you have to pay attention. You must maintain perfect form. You have to respect the weight.
Okay, respect the weight.
Right. But crucially, it's not so heavy that it feels intimidating or that your form breaks down or, that you risk injury just by attempting it. It demands significant effort, but it's totally within your capacity for perfect execution.
Okay. Challenging, but doable with perfect form.
Exactly. Now, here's the really interesting part of his method, as the source details it. Instead of doing as many reps as you possibly can with that weight, pushing to exhaustion.
Yeah, the usual way.
Right. You perform only half the number of repetitions you could potentially do in a maximal effort set. Only half. And this is critical, you take long breaks, like several minutes between these sets.
That feels completely backward. Like the opposite of everything you hear in the gym about pushing to fatigue, feeling the burn. Why only half the reps in these long breaks?
That's the genius of it, according to the source's explanation of his method. The goal isn't to just exhaust the muscle fibers until they fail in that single session. That kind of training, it causes significant muscle damage, requires long recovery times.
Yeah, you feel wiped out for days sometimes.
Exactly. And that limits how often you can train effectively. Plus, it increases the risk of injury or overtraining. Satsaline's approach, it's based more on neurological adaptation, basically, training your nervous system to become more efficient at recruiting the muscle fibers you already have.
Ah, okay. So it's brain training as much as muscle training.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
By using that Goldilocks load with perfect form, but only for half the maximal reps, you're reinforcing the ideal movement pattern under significant, but importantly controlled stress. The long breaks. They allow your nervous system to fully recover between sets.
So you're fresh for the next one.
Precisely. It ensures the quality of each subsequent set stays really high. You're essentially teaching your body and brain to execute the movement perfectly and powerfully, not just gritting your teeth and pushing through fatigue with, deteriorating form. The principle he talks about is greasing the groove. You're not primarily trying to make the muscle bigger through damage and repair. You're making the neural pathway for that specific movement smoother, more efficient, stronger through frequent, perfect practice at a challenging but sustainable intensity.
Greasing the groove. I like that.
Yeah. And because you're not destroying yourself each session, this allows you to perform many more high-quality sets over the course of a week or a month than if you were constantly recovering from pushing to failure. So the total volume of quality work skyrockets, and that leads to sustainable strength gains.
Okay, greasing the groove. I love that visual. It's like making the movement feel effortless because you've practiced it perfectly under resistance so many times. So how does this very specific weightlifting technique become this powerful metaphor for tackling challenges in life, like the source suggests?
Well, it's actually a perfect parallel when you think about it. Life throws weights at us all the time, right? Difficult projects at work, personal crises, learning new skills, navigating complex relationships.
Yeah, the daily grind can feel heavy.
For sure. And if we approach these challenges with that push to failure
Yeah.
mindset, trying to do everything at once, never resting, taking on loads that just cause burnout or breakdown, we risk injury.
Mental or emotional injury.
Exactly. Exhaustion, anxiety, poor performance, or just giving up entirely. That's like trying to max out on a weight you simply can't handle with good form.
Okay.
So the Goldilocks principle applied to life, inspired by Satsaline, means engaging with the difficulty you have to respect the weight, acknowledge the challenge, but choosing a level that is challenging but manageable.
Finding that sweet spot again.
Right. It's about maybe breaking down an overwhelming task into smaller, achievable sets, like doing half the reps. It's about consciously taking those necessary long breaks, stepping away, resting, recovering to maintain your mental and emotional form.
So you don't burn out.
Exactly. This kind of intelligent engagement, it allows for consistent, high-quality effort over time. You get more total sets and volume over the week in life terms. You build resilience and capability by practicing effectively at a sustainable intensity, not by constantly hitting that wall of exhaustion.
You're greasing the groove of dealing with difficulty.
Precisely. You make the process itself more efficient and less debilitating over time. You're still facing the difficulty, absolutely, but you're doing it with strategy and self-awareness to ensure long-term progress instead of short-term burnout. It's about how you gain strength from the problem without being crushed by it.
Okay, so the lesson from Kelly and Satsaline woven together here is problems are, yeah, probably necessary for growth, but the way you engage with them is absolutely critical. Engage wisely, sustainably, like lifting that Goldilocks weight, rather than just pushing yourself to physical or mental failure. It's about intelligent effort over just brute force. That idea of sustainable growth through intelligent effort, it leads us quite nicely into the next theme the sources explore. The whole journey of learning and how we both acquire and then, importantly, share wisdom. The source brings in this classic quote from Cervantes.
Yes.
He who reads much and travels much, sees much and knows much.
It's such a beautiful, concise summary of what makes up a truly rich education, isn't it? Reading much clearly represents absorbing knowledge from others. History, science, philosophy, stories, data. It's learning from the accumulated experience and thought of humanity, captured in books and other media.
The theory, the maps.
Exactly. It provides the theoretical frameworks, the context, the lessons learned by those who came before us. It gives you the map. But Cervantes doesn't stop there, crucially. He pairs it with travels much.
Right.
And as the source implies, this traveling isn't just about, hopping on a plane and visiting different countries, although that's certainly a valuable part of it. It's about lived experience in the broadest possible sense.
Getting your hands dirty.
Yeah. Encountering different people, facing unexpected situations, experimenting, trying things out. sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. It's about applying what you've read to the messy, unpredictable reality of the world. Reading gives you the map, but traveling is actually walking the terrain.
Feeling the ground under your feet.
Precisely. You understand the inclines, the obstacles, the unexpected beauty that, honestly, no map can fully capture. True knowing, deep knowing, it comes from synthesizing these two things. The theoretical understanding and the practical, embodied experience, they sort of validate and challenge and deepen each other.
Right, like you can read every cookbook ever written on baking bread, but you don't truly know baking until you've actually mixed the dough, felt its stickiness, smelled it rising, and yeah, probably burned a few loaves along the way.
Exactly. It's an essential combination. And then, building on this idea of gaining wisdom, the sources follow up with Richard Feynman's advice, which connects beautifully.
Ah, Feynman, what does he say?
He advises, teach your children early what you learned late.
Oof, it's got some weight to it.
It really does. It's such a profound and maybe slightly melancholic piece of wisdom, because it acknowledges that the most important, the most deeply felt lessons in life, well, they're often learned through our own hard experience. Frequently after years of struggle or mistakes or just searching, it's the wisdom we finally arrive at late in the game, often after stubbing our toes countless times.
If I knew then what I know now kind of feeling.
Exactly that feeling. Feynman's point, and the source highlights this so well, is that the value of that hard-won wisdom isn't just for ourselves. The real power comes in transforming that personal difficulty, that delayed insight, into a form that can actually be passed on.
Like a gift.
Precisely. We have the opportunity to shorten the learning curve for those who come after us, whether it's our literal children or, anyone we mentor or influence. We can potentially save them some of the pain and the struggle we endured by sharing the lessons we learned the hard way.
But that's tricky, isn't it? How do you really teach something learned late? Like you said about traveling, sometimes people just need to walk their own path to truly know certain things, even if they've heard the advice.
Absolutely. It's incredibly tricky. The art, I think, is in sharing the insight in a way that resonates, offering the perspective without demanding they simply follow your exact path or dismissing the value of their own unique journey. It's like offering them the map you really wish you'd had earlier, while acknowledging they still need to walk the road themselves.
Yeah, offering the map, not forcing the route. So there's this really incredible cycle presented here in the sources. We absorb knowledge from the world, both abstractly through reading and through direct experience, traveling or just living life. We integrate these learnings, often arriving at the deepest insights only after significant time and effort learning it late. And then there's this sort of responsibility or maybe opportunity to transmit that hard-won wisdom to others teaching it early. It's like a continuous loop of growth, reflection, and contribution.
Beautifully put. A cycle of wisdom.
Okay, shifting gears a bit now. From learning and growth out in the world, let's turn more towards our relationships, both with ourselves and with others. The sources bring up a different kind of critical balance, one that's articulated really beautifully by Paulo Coelho.
Coelho, yes.
He says, when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself.
This piece of advice sounds so simple, doesn't it? But wow, it is incredibly challenging to actually live by.
Yeah.
In so many cultures and just in our personal dynamics, there's such a strong pull towards prioritizing the needs and requests of others.
The pressure to be agreeable, helpful.
Exactly. Family, friends, colleagues, societal expectations. Saying yes can feel kind, it can feel generous, sometimes it even feels obligatory, like you don't have a choice.
Right.
However, Coelho's point, as the source interprets it, is that there's this vital internal check that's required before you say yes. Each external yes you give away, it consumes your limited resources, your time, your energy, your emotional capacity, your mental bandwidth.
There's always a cost.
There is. And if you say yes to others reflexively, just automatically, without checking in with your own internal state and your own needs first, then you are, by definition, saying no to yourself. You're saying no to your need for rest or for personal time or for pursuing your own goals or just for maintaining your boundaries.
You're putting yourself last, basically.
Pretty much. And the long-term consequence of constantly saying yes to others while always saying no to yourself is, well, it's depletion. You just empty your own well.
Burnout.
Classic burnout.
Yeah.
You become resentful, stressed, and ultimately you become less capable of showing up fully, either for yourself or for others, in a healthy, sustainable way. This isn't about advocating for selfishness, not at all. It's highlighting that self-care, that act of saying yes to your own foundational needs, is actually a prerequisite for genuine, sustainable generosity towards others.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
That's the perfect analogy. You
Yeah.
just can't.
Yeah.
And constantly saying yes to external demands while saying no to internal needs is a surefire way to run on empty.
That resonates so deeply with so many people's experience, I think. That feeling of being completely drained. It's a recognition that your own well-being isn't some kind of luxury item. It's the actual foundation for contributing anything meaningful to others. But then the sources introduce a related but seemingly counterintuitive idea from Gary Shandling.
Ah, yes, Shandling. This one adds a fascinating layer of complexity to the Coelho quote.
What's his take?
He says, "Give what you didn't get."
Give what you didn't get. That sounds backward again.
It does initially, because when we haven't received something really essential, maybe it was love or understanding, support, validation, opportunities, the natural human response can often be to protect ourselves, right? We might become guarded, maybe close off, perhaps even feel bitter. Why on earth should we give something we never received ourselves?
Yeah, it feels unfair.
It can,
Hmm?
but Shandling's wisdom, as the source explains it, is to completely flip that script. He suggests that the very experience of lacking something crucial actually gives you a unique perspective, and maybe even a deep well of empathy. Because you know intimately what it feels like to not have that thing. You are uniquely positioned to understand just how important it is, and how much others might desperately need it.
So the lack creates understanding.
Exactly. Your experience of the wound, the absence, becomes the source of your ability to heal or support others in that specific way. Someone who's, say, struggled intensely with loneliness might become exceptionally skilled at building community for others. Someone who never had a good mentor might become a really dedicated and insightful mentor themselves.
Turning a negative into a positive.
Precisely. Someone who felt constantly misunderstood might become an incredibly empathetic listener. It's about transmuting the pain of that past deprivation into a powerful force for present-day generosity and connection. It's giving, not necessarily from a place of already being full and overflowing, like Coelho implies you need to be to sustain giving, but giving because you understand the emptiness so deeply, and your act of filling that emptiness for another person can actually be profoundly healing for yourself as well.
Wow. Okay, so these two ideas together, Coelho and Shandling, they create a much richer picture than just be generous or be selfish. It's more nuanced. Coelho reminds us we need to care for ourselves first, fill our own cup, so that we have the capacity and resilience to give authentically.
Right, the foundation.
And then Shandling adds this powerful layer. Our deepest capacity for empathetic giving might actually come specifically from those experiences where we didn't receive something. We can use the knowledge of that lack to fuel our compassion and our action towards others. It's like an integrated approach.
Exactly. Maintain your capacity through self-care. Absolutely. And then let your unique history, even the painful parts, inform and deepen how and what you choose to give.
Okay, prepare for another pivot. This one's maybe the most unexpected. From the internal landscape of self and service, we jump to, well, dogs.
Chuckles, right? Dogs.
Specifically, Seth Godin's observation about purebred dogs, which the source uses to make a surprisingly profound point about artificial standards. The simple fact stated is, all dogs are mixed breed dogs.
And of course, biologically, that's fundamentally true. All domestic dogs share common ancestry way back. But Godin uses this basic biological truth to launch a critique of human-created systems. As the source explains it, the entire concept of a purebred dog is essentially an artificial construct.
Made up by humans.
Entirely.
Yeah.
It's based on these invented profiles,
Yeah.
Specific physical traits, maybe temperaments, strict lineage rules defined by organizations like the AKC, the Kennel Club, and so on. These are entirely human-made rule books dictating what a specific breed should look like or be like.
Just arbitrary lines drawn in the sand.
Pretty much. And the consequences of this system, as the source really highlights, are significant and, frankly, often detrimental to the dogs themselves. Breeders and owners can become deeply invested in meeting these arbitrary standards, sometimes prioritizing adherence to the rule book over the actual well-being of the animal.
Focusing on looks over health.
Often, yes. This intense focus on maintaining these closed gene pools based on narrow human-defined criteria leads directly, the source argues, to a major health crisis due to inbreeding. Many purebreds suffer terribly from debilitating genetic conditions that are just rampant within their breed because the gene pool is too small and too focused on aesthetics or specific sometimes superficial traits, rather than overall health and genetic diversity.
That's really sad.
It is. And furthermore, the system contributes to the huge burden on a shelter system that often has trouble keeping up with puppies rejected or unsold, simply because they don't perfectly meet these strict artificial breed standards. They might have the wrong ear set or the wrong coat color.
Just because they don't fit the mold.
Exactly. The source points out this staggering reality. Millions of dogs are affected. Their health and welfare dictated by a simple rule book of what sort of dog someone said they are,
Nice.
rather than their intrinsic value as living beings or their actual health.
That's a really sobering picture. It really shows how powerful and sometimes harmful these human-invented rules can become when they get detached from natural reality or active well-being. So how does this whole canine critique connect back to us, to human behavior and our own lives?
Well, it serves as a very powerful and kind of stark metaphor for the arbitrary social constructs and artificial standards that we also
Oh.
create and then blindly follow in human society. Just think about the rule books we live by, consciously or unconsciously.
Like what?
How much of what we pursue, what we value, how we measure things like success or beauty or worth or status, how much of that is based not on intrinsic human well-being or connection or fulfillment, but on standards that were simply invented by someone, somewhere, and then just propagated through culture?
That's a big question.
It is. Are we in some ways striving to be purebred humans according to some external, often unattainable standard? Whether that's, a specific career path that's deemed successful, or a certain body type or look defined as beautiful, or a particular level of wealth or material possessions, or even just adherence to rigid social or ideological pedigrees.
Keeping up with the Joneses, but on a deeper level.
Exactly. And are these pursuits, which are dictated by these often artificial standards, maybe leading to a kind of human health crisis? Rampant anxiety, depression, burnout, identity crises, comparison fatigue, societal division. Could these be analogous to the inbreeding crisis in dogs, stemming from chasing narrow, invented ideals? The Godin example, it really forces us to question. Are we allowing a simple rule book of what sort of person someone said we are or should be to dictate our lives, our self-worth, and maybe even cause us harm, much like those purebred dogs? It's a call to critically examine the standards that are driving our behavior. Are they genuinely contributing to flourishing, to well-being? Or are they just arbitrary lines in the sand, causing unnecessary suffering and distracting us from what truly matters?
It's a really deep point hidden in plain sight, isn't it? Are we chasing these external purebred ideals in our own lives that might actually be detrimental just because we've bought into a rule book somebody else invented? That's powerful.
It makes you think.
And speaking of questioning what truly matters beyond those external standards, the sources offer a really poignant story next, one that perhaps delivers one of the most powerful lessons on where true happiness might actually reside. It's the story of Anthony Bourdain.
Ah, yes. This story is, well, it's heartbreaking, largely because of the stark contrast it presents, and maybe the timing of its lesson coming to light. Anthony Bourdain lived a life that I think many people would consider the absolute epitome of extraordinary.
Totally. Global fame, travel.
Right. Globally renowned chef, best-selling author, beloved television host. He traveled the entire world, experienced countless diverse cultures, ate the most incredible food, met fascinating people from all walks of life. He achieved immense fame, freedom, seemingly everything.
The dream life for many.
It would seem so. Yet, in an interview, not that long before his tragic death, he reflected on his life, and he stated, and this is striking, he was never happier than when I'm standing in the backyard being like, TV dad. He described finding these moments of just ridiculously stupid happy in something utterly mundane, especially by his standards, simply grilling burgers for his family in his backyard.
Wow. After all that travel and adventure.
Exactly. This, despite his globe-trotting exotic life.
Yeah.
The source really emphasizes the tragic irony here. A man who had access to literally the world's most stimulating experiences found his deepest, most profound contentment in a moment of simple domestic ordinariness.
That's incredible.
And his life, as the source also points out, was marked by significant internal battles, deep struggles with addiction, with depression, with loss. The tragic end, occurring far, far away from that idyllic backyard scene, it just underscores that external achievement and experience, no matter how extraordinary they appear, they don't automatically guarantee internal peace or happiness.
Yeah.
The source explicitly pulls out 3 critical lessons from Bourdain's story and his reflection. The first is just a stark, urgent reminder to enjoy the present while we have it. His story is such a vivid illustration that life is fragile and moments, however ordinary they seem, are incredibly precious and fleeting. We so often postpone appreciating the present while we're busy chasing some future goal or some bigger experience.
Always looking ahead, not around.
Right. The second lesson follows directly. To remember how little we actually need in order to be happy, how wonderful the ordinary moments can be. This directly challenges that dominant societal narrative that happiness requires external validation, huge success, or constant extraordinary experiences. Bourdain's confession reveals that profound joy can often be found in the most accessible, simple acts of connection and presence, like grilling burgers in the backyard. It's a powerful counterpoint to the relentless pressure to seek the extraordinary.
Finding the magic in the mundane.
Exactly. And the third lesson, which is deeply connected to the first two, adds a layer of urgency. To understand how quickly it can all be taken away. This isn't meant to be morbid, I think, but realistic. It's a call to cultivate gratitude for what we have right here, right now, in the simple, everyday moments of our lives, because, well, they're not guaranteed.
That's heavy, but important. And the source connects this moving story directly to another quote that seems, maybe at first glance, like it's about external achievement, but it takes on a totally new meaning in this context.
What quote is that?
The strongest factor for success is self-esteem. Believing you can do it, believing you deserve it, believing you will get it.
Ah, yes. That connection is absolutely crucial for understanding what success might truly mean here. If we define success purely by those external metrics, fame, wealth, travel, achievement, then, yeah, Bourdain was incredibly successful by any standard measure.
Off the charts.
Right. But his story, put alongside this quote about self-esteem, suggests that maybe true success is rooted much more deeply in an internal state.
Okay, how so?
Well, self-esteem, at its core, is about an internal sense of worthiness and capability. Believing you deserve happiness, believing you can find contentment, and believing you will get it not just through grand achievements, but perhaps, as Bourdain discovered, in the simple, ordinary moments. His ability to find that ridiculously stupid happy feeling just grilling burgers. You could see that through this lens as an act of internal validation.
Like allowing himself that simple joy.
Exactly. He allowed himself to be present and find joy in that incredibly normal moment, perhaps believing, at least then, that it was enough and that he deserved that simple peace.
Whereas maybe without that self-esteem.
Conversely, yeah, a lack of self-esteem, that nagging feeling that maybe you don't really deserve simple happiness or peace.
Yeah.
That might keep you constantly chasing the next external validation, the next big thing, never allowing yourself to just rest or appreciate the ordinary, always feeling like you need to achieve more, be more, to finally feel worthy.
The hamster wheel.
The hamster wheel, exactly. Bourdain's life, tragically, serves as this powerful reminder that pursuing external success without cultivating internal well-being and without developing the capacity to truly value and savor the ordinary moments can lead to a life that, despite its outward brilliance, feels ultimately unfulfilling or is even tragically cut short. The self-esteem quote reframes success not just as having things or experiences, but as having an internal state that allows you to truly appreciate life, including its simplest, most fundamental joys.
Wow. The man who seemingly experienced the most extraordinary life found his deepest happiness in the profoundly ordinary. It's a powerful and, yeah, given his story, a truly heartbreaking reminder about shifting our focus inward and really valuing the simple, present moments we have right now.
Vital lesson.
Let's take that idea of focusing inward even further now. The sources also delve directly into our internal landscape, specifically that voice that lives inside our heads pretty much 24/7. There's a really striking piece of advice offered here.
What is it?
Make certain that your best friend lives between your own two ears.
Size, yeah. We all have that internal monologue, don't we? That constant stream of thoughts, observations, judgments, self-talk. And for so many people, that voice is definitely not a best friend.
More like a harsh critic.
Exactly. Often it's a relentless critic or a pessimist, a constant source of doubt and fear. It questions our abilities. It replays our past mistakes over and over. It anticipates failure around every corner.
It can be exhausting.
Totally exhausting. This quote is such a powerful call to action. Consciously, actively cultivate that internal voice into an ally, into a friend. It's not necessarily about silencing it entirely, which is probably impossible anyway, and maybe not even desirable because some level of self-reflection is healthy. But it's about changing the nature of the conversation you're having with yourself.
Changing the tone from critic to coach, maybe.
That's a great way to put it, critic to coach, or critic to friend. And the source actually provides the key technique for making this transformation happen. It says, always question the voice inside that questions. Always make the doubter prove his or case. Or shut the fuck up.
Chuckles. Okay, that's direct.
It is direct, but it's about active mental discipline. When that internal voice pipes up and says, you're not good enough for this, or this is definitely going to fail, you don't just passively accept it as truth, you interrogate it.
Put it on trial.
Exactly. You ask, okay, based on what actual evidence? Show me the proof. Where's the data supporting this claim?
Mm.
And if the doubt can't provide concrete factual evidence, which often it can't, it's just fear talking, you consciously choose to dismiss it.
Yeah.
You refuse to give that negative voice automatic authority over your state of mind.
You challenge its credentials.
Precisely. You are essentially training your brain over time to default to a more supportive, more constructive narrative
Right.
by challenging the negative one every single time it pops up. You're actively shaping your internal environment, making it a safer, more encouraging space to live inside your own head.
It's like becoming the mindful editor of your own thoughts, rather than just being a passive listener to whatever comes up. And the source connects this practice, this managing of the inner voice, directly to Joe Dispenza's concept.
Yes, Dispenza.
The idea of get away from disease by cultivating ease.
This connection beautifully illustrates the very real, tangible impact our internal state has on our overall well-being, mind and body. Dispenza's work, as it's referenced here, really emphasizes that powerful link. When our internal world is dominated by that critical, fearful, doubting voice, when we are constantly battling ourselves internally or resisting reality, or living in a state of chronic anxiety or inner conflict, we create this state of stress and disharmony within us.
That feeling of being unsettled.
Exactly. That is the disease he talks about.
Yeah.
A feeling of being unsettled, out of alignment, constantly struggling internally. And this internal friction, this dis-ease, it doesn't just manifest mentally as stress or unhappiness. It can potentially manifest in physical ways as well, contributing to all sorts of health issues.
The mind-body connection.
Absolutely. Cultivating ease, on the other hand, means consciously fostering an internal state of peace, of acceptance, of harmony. It's about actively reducing that internal conflict, and managing that inner critical voice is perhaps the most direct path to doing exactly that.
Makes sense.
By questioning the doubt, by building a supportive internal ally, by refusing to be constantly at war with your own thoughts, you significantly reduce that chronic internal stress. You create a sense of psychological safety within yourself. Moving from dis-ease to ease isn't about magically making external problems disappear. It's about changing your internal relationship to those problems, and crucially, to yourself.
So you handle things better.
Exactly. When you cultivate ease through this kind of mental discipline, you become more resilient. You're better able to navigate the external challenges life throws at you without being completely thrown into internal chaos. It allows you to meet life with a sense of grounded peace rather than constant internal struggle.
So the sources here are really emphasizing that mastering your internal landscape, turning your inner critic into a friend and actively cultivating a state of ease isn't just some nice, fluffy idea. It's a fundamental practice for both navigating the external world more effectively and finding genuine internal peace and well-being.
It's foundational.
Wow, okay. We have journeyed through a truly incredible range of insights today, haven't we? It feels like quite the expedition.
It really does.
We started with the necessity of facing difficulty, using that weightlifting analogy. We explored how we learn and then share wisdom. We navigated that really complex balance of self-care and serving others. We used the surprising example of dog breeding to question these arbitrary societal standards, found deep meaning in the ordinary through Anthony Bourdain's poignant story, and then finally we delved into the critical practice of managing our inner world, that voice in our heads. It really does feel like the source material has woven all these disparate threads together into what it aptly calls a philosophy for living.
It does, and the powerful through line, the concept connecting all these seemingly different points, as the source highlights it, is this idea of integration. None of these insights exist in a vacuum, and true wisdom, it seems, isn't about choosing one side of a perceived duality over the other. It's much more about finding a way to hold and harmonize, to integrate these seemingly opposite forces. It's about embracing the paradoxes inherent in life.
Holding the tension.
Exactly, holding the tension. And the source shows us how this integration plays out across all the segments we discussed. First, we don't just avoid challenges, but we integrate difficulty with wise engagement. We find progress through the problem, like lifting that Goldilocks load, balancing the effort with recovery. That connects Kelly and Satsling.
Right.
Then we integrate theoretical knowledge from reading with practical experience from traveling to gain deep understanding. And then we integrate our hard-won, late-learned wisdom by consciously sharing it early to contribute to others. That's Cervantes and Feynman together.
The learning cycle.
Exactly. Then we integrate caring for ourselves as the necessary foundation for serving others authentically. That's Coelho. And we integrate the pain of not receiving something in the past to fuel our unique capacity to give it generously. Now that's Shandling. Balancing self and service.
Okay.
Then we integrate a critical awareness that prompts us to question those arbitrary, potentially harmful external standards, like Godin's dogs showed us, with the ability to find genuine value and deep joy in the simple, ordinary realities of life, like Bourdain's story and the self-esteem principle illustrated. That's balancing our critique of the external world with an appreciation for our internal reality.
Questioning outwards, valuing inwards.
Precisely. And finally, we integrate the discipline of managing our internal dialogue, turning that critic into an ally, specifically to cultivate a state of ease. This ease allows us to navigate the inherent difficulties and uncertainties of life without succumbing to that perpetual internal disease. That connects the inner voice, advice, and dispensa.
It really ties it all together. And you mentioned before there were those other simple, actionable wisdoms included in the source material as well. They also seem to reinforce this theme of integration, but maybe in more straightforward ways.
They do, absolutely. Things like, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. That integrates individual potential with collective responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Or everything holy in life is doable and repeatable. That integrates the sacred or the deeply meaningful with consistent, simple, everyday practice. It demystifies it.
Makes it accessible.
Right. Don't engage in minimum wage thinking. Integrates valuing your own potential and worth with avoiding self-limiting perspectives. And the classic work hard and stay humble obviously integrates ambition and effort with a grounded self-awareness. They're all calls to hold two necessary, sometimes seemingly opposing things in balance.
Yeah, you need both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This philosophy of living, as it's presented through this collection of sources, is ultimately about finding that balance. It's about having the humility to learn from both books and the bumps in the road, but also having the confidence to teach what you know. It's about being mindful of your own needs so you can be generous with your unique capacity, maybe born from your own experiences of lack. It's about questioning the external noise and standards, but finding deep peace in the internal quiet and the simple, repeatable rhythms of life. It's about facing problems head-on, yes, but doing so with wisdom, sustainability, and that Goldilocks approach. It's really a constant dance of holding these seemingly opposite forces together in a dynamic way.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, honestly. Pulling these profound lessons from such unexpected places, weightlifting, dog breeds, it really underscores that wisdom for living isn't confined to one particular discipline or type of experience. It seems like it's everywhere, just waiting to be noticed and integrated.
Well said.
The common thread running through it all seems to be this active, intentional process of engagement with life, how we choose to face its challenges, how we choose to learn and grow, how we choose to relate to ourselves and to others, and maybe most importantly, what we consciously choose to value beyond those often artificial external standards.
And if we're to take this core idea of integrating paradoxes forward into our lives, holding both the challenge and the wisdom gained from it, the essential self-care and the call to service, the critical questioning of external views, and the deep appreciation of internal reality. Here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to just sit with as you go about your day or your week or month. What is one area in your own life right now where you feel pulled between two seemingly opposite things? Maybe it's action versus rest, or planning versus spontaneity. Perhaps it's self-improvement versus self-acceptance, or contributing outwardly versus cultivating your inner world. Whatever it is for you, how could you consciously try to integrate both sides of that tension a little more fully this week, rather than feeling like you're forced to choose just one or the other? Where might you find some wisdom, some ease in holding that balance?
Something to definitely think about, holding both sides. Thanks for joining us for this depth dive.